Today on Adversity to Strength, I'm joined by Marjie Hadad, a global communications expert, award-winning television producer, author, and speaker. Marjie has built a remarkable career helping leaders at every level use communication as a tool for solving problems, achieving goals, and creating positive impact. In this conversation, we explore how effective communication, management crisis strategies work, how to recover, transform adversity into opportunity, both in leadership and in life. Margie, thanks so much for coming on the podcast.
Lee, how are you?
I'm good, thanks. I'm very well, thanks. Thanks for taking the time out today. Really interested in reading your book earlier as well. There's so much to it as well. And obviously you want to talk about how to deal in like crisis management there. Tell us a little bit about what's gone on for you and what you'd recommend for people if they're in similar situations to yourself.
Well, first of all, it's lovely to see you.
Thank you.
And I've been in communications and media for 40 years. I hope I don't look like it, but there you have it. And one thing I can tell you is that over the years, I have always brought my full self to everything that I do at the office and at home. And in the communications business, we have crises almost on a daily basis because everybody thinks the sky is falling for one reason or another. And in each case, what we do is we assess the situation, then we strategize to figure out how we're going to fix the problem, and then we implement. Pretty simple, right?
Yeah.
Doesn't sound like rocket science.
Sounds simple.
Correct?
Yeah.
Okay. So at work, if a client would call me and say, this is wrong, or this didn't happen, or why weren't we included, or they didn't do what we thought that they were going to do, what do I do? Then we strategize together, figure what's the key message, what do we want to say, and who's the right person to say it, and what's the right way to say it. Do we do it in writing? Is it a phone call? Is it an email? And then the point person implements. The right person implements. That's how we do it at work. When you bring it home or in your travels, it's the same policy. I was at a park years ago when my kids were little. And by the way, they're all grown now. They're all in their 20s. I have adults. I can't believe it, but I have adults. But when they were little, say elementary school age, and my daughter and her friend were on the swings, and her friend fell off her swing and smashed her head on the ground, and she started to bleed. And her mother, who's a very educated, very kind, very capable woman, started to freak out. So I understood that somebody had to manage this crisis. So I assessed the situation. Walked over to the little girl, and I said to her mother, let me have a look. And she said, no problem. And I looked to see what was going on, and she had a pretty deep gash in her forehead. I asked her, what's your name? How are you doing? How do you feel? Everything okay? And she was concerned because she knew that she had been hurt. But I was checking was to see whether she had a concussion or not and whether she could see me, those kind of things. I'm not a medical professional, but these are kind of basic things I know just from growing up and some people in my family, including myself, having a concussion. I said to her mother, I gave her an occupation. I said, call the ambulance. Okay, call the ambulance. Next, let's clean off the wound. Somebody grabbed me a wipe. So I wiped off the wound and then I covered it. That was all we could really do until the real medical professionals arrived. I knew I should keep her awake. So with all the kids who had already gathered around at that point, I said, okay, somebody pick a song and let's sing a song. And then we all sang a song. And about 3 minutes later, the ambulance arrived.
Yeah.
And she was fine. Assess, strategize. If someone's freaking out, give them an occupation or tell them to please leave because they're not helping.
Yeah.
And exercise what you can do to fix the problem.
Yeah.
You mentioned in the first chapter of my book,
Yes.
The title is Crisis Management. And we run through all the different crises, danger, all sorts of things that we've encountered over the years. And we all encounter pretty much the same things, more or less, just different varieties of it.
Yeah.
So I just really think that it's important for anybody watching this or listening to this to know that you're not alone. Don't waste time freaking out because it doesn't help anybody, and especially the situation or the person who's hurt or in danger. If you can help and you can manage it, then do so and think about how you can fix it pretty quickly. And if you can't, get out of the way, call somebody who can actually make a difference. That's it.
What about when somebody was trying to, something happens, like with your son, he cut his head. For a lot of parents, they're freaking out. They can't handle blood. They're oh, what do I do? And they go into panic mode, but there might not be anyone around. So they've got to pull their selves together. What would you say is the best way of them being able to do that?
You need to hyper focus and put emotions to the side. When my young son at the time, he hit his head on the edge of a toilet bowl because the floor was wet because I, in my genius style, didn't bother to wipe up the floor 100% after I had given his younger sister a bath. So he went down, smashed his eyebrow. He's bleeding. I'm in the shower. My husband is crying out for my name. I come out with a towel wrapped around me to see what's going on. And my kid's looking up at me and he just says, "Mommy, I hurt myself." And they were both looking at me like, now what? So, same procedure. I said, "Okay, Guy, can you see me?" And he said, "Yes, I can." I said, "Give me a couple seconds to get dressed." Threw on some clothes. My husband said, "Do you want me to come with you to emergency?" I said, "No." And I put my young son into his car seat. That's how young he was. And I apologized to him because it really was my fault. It was on me that I hadn't dried the floor properly and that he had slipped and fell. We got to the emergency room, and this always surprises me until today, but they didn't rush him in for stitches because apparently, and this is interesting for anybody out there, like a parent whose kid falls. When you have a face, the macrophages, the white cells, they rush to your face first. So you have time before you're going to actually have any scarring. We waited in the emergency room, in the waiting room, for like a full hour before they took him in and stitched him up. Found that fascinating.
Yeah.
But to your point in terms of emotions, I didn't let myself feel any emotion until after the fact. Assess, strategize, implement. And in this particular case, it was on me. It wasn't an ambulance situation, but it did because he looked okay. I just knew I just needed to protect it so it didn't get any worse and get him to a medical professional immediately.
And when it comes to letting your emotions out, did you decide, you know what, I need to recognize how I'm feeling about this? How did you go about that? Because people struggle to let emotions out. Then people are overwhelmed and they have to come out. How did you deal with that?
I cry.
Was it as soon as everything's out of the way, your son's safe, is everything good? Yeah, okay. And then it all comes out.
Yes, yes. I cry. And when I have a lot of nervous energy, I take a brisk walk and I walk until I feel a little bit better. And I take deep breaths and I stretch my arms to the side and above my head. And I just move my body to get the nervous energy out. And if I'm completely overwhelmed, then I will just cry and cry and cry and get it out that way. That's what happened after my son. That's what happened after the story about my daughter and rushing her to the hospital after her tonsillectomy. And it certainly happened multiple times when my husband collapsed and we needed to rush him to emergency. And we didn't have an outcome or know what was going on for a good 5 to 10 days.
How did you manage going through that at the time? Because you come across as somebody that if there's an issue, you want to deal with it, fix it as soon as you can, and then it's done. But then obviously there's times where you can't, it's out of your control. So how do you go about managing that?
I always call someone who I think can help and move the situation along in a positive way towards a positive outcome. In the case of my husband, he collapsed on our bedroom floor at 7:30 in the morning on a Saturday while he was preparing to go to the gym. And I was sleeping because I'm really, full disclosure, I'm not much of an early morning person. I can do it if I have to or if it's part of the job, but my choice would be to wake up when I wake up.
Right.
Actually, this morning I woke up pretty early, but that's another story. So it's Saturday morning. It's 7:30. I'm really out of it. And I hear this crashing sound. Lee, I have never heard a sound like that in my entire life. I had no idea what had broken. It was so confusing that I shot up in bed to a sitting position, got out of bed, and went to look, what on earth? What's that? And I found my husband, who is a very tall, larger man, spread out on the floor, bleeding and not moving. And he said to me, I can't feel my legs. And I thought to myself, I need to get some help. So I said, I'm going to call an ambulance. And I half expected him to say, no, 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 I'll get up in a couple of minutes or a couple seconds. And there was dead silence. So I called the ambulance and I went straight into communication crisis mode. Assess, strategize, implement. I could not help my husband in that moment other than to make a phone call.
Did you know that at the time? Do you know what? All I can do is make a phone call here.
Yes, because I could not lift him. He was bleeding. He was basically non-responsive. So I knew that it was instantly, it was instant. I literally went into Ice Princess mode, pushed every emotion I had to the side. When anybody has asked me over the years, how did you feel? My answer is nothing, literally nothing. I felt nothing. I knew I needed help, so I called the ambulance and they told me what I needed to do in preparation for the emergency workers to arrive.
Right.
And I knew that I needed help getting his bag together because it was obvious he was going to spend a few days in the hospital, at least. My daughter was home. She heard the tone of my voice. Now she's, say 21. Instead of the usual millions of questions of why, she heard the tone of my voice and what I was saying. And she just said, okay. And then the emergency workers came. We took 2 ambulance rides to the hospital. He went into cardiac ICU. Do you want me to give spoiler alert if you want to read the book or not? But very long story short, so you can read the details if you choose. But we did spend 10 days in the hospital. He had ricocheted his spinal cord. He had, pardon me?
He done that during the fall when he fell.
Yes. What happened was he had lost consciousness while he was standing because of all right, this is spoiler alert, because of a double embolism.
All right.
Lost consciousness, went timber like a log, hit his head on the pointy edge of the sock drawer handle, and then ricocheted onto the floor. Now, I didn't know any of this until after the fact. I didn't even know that he had hit the handle of the sock drawer. I found out maybe 10 days later when I was speaking with our housekeeper at the time, a lovely woman who came immediately to help me clean up the place because it ended up being a disaster between all sorts of things. She said, didn't you see the blood on the handle? No, I didn't. I was too focused on my communications, crisis management, strategy, and exercising that within seconds. So from the time that my husband had fallen on the floor to the time he was at the hospital was about 10 to 20 minutes.
Did that feel like a real long time for you? Because in its grand scheme of things, it's a short time, especially compared to the UK. But, was that like a long time to you? Or did it go really quickly?
No, it didn't go really quickly. And in the ambulance ride, they said it was my responsibility to make sure he remained conscious. So every 30 seconds, are you awake? Are you awake? Yes, I'm awake, but my head hurts. That's okay if your head hurts. Are you awake? Are you awake? And then what protocol is once you get to the hospital is that if you say you can't feel your legs, they do a full CT of you. They thought he might be diabetic. They had all sorts of thoughts along the way in the ambulance, but the doctor said he can't feel his legs, CT immediately. And that's where they discovered the double embolism. And then the question was whether to treat for that or whether to treat for the spinal cord injury.
Yeah.
And there were like 10 chief medical professionals in the hallway of his ICU room debating on what to treat first. It was a really, really crazy time period. And I handled it emotionally by turning off emotionally. I got very practical because I knew that I needed to stay positive with a smile on my face for my husband and for those around me. And everyone around was really great. Everybody pitched in, everyone offered help, and we took the help where we needed. And that's another message to who's ever listening to this or watching this. Don't be afraid to ask for help.
Always.
There's no shame in it.
No.
Nobody can do it all, not when it comes to these kind of things. It's one thing if you're making an egg. It's another thing if you're dealing with a crisis.
Yes.
And actually, I need help when I'm making eggs because I'm a disaster in the kitchen. So listen, I even asked for help with making an egg on occasion.
Yeah.
So do what you need to do in the moment so that it takes seconds, because sometimes you're going to be in a situation that's life or death. And if it's on you to lean towards life, you have to focus. You have to do your thing, and you must keep your sense of humor
Always
in
for
order
everything.
not to go nuts about it. I mean, I was cracking jokes the whole way through. I don't know if anybody thought I was funny or not, but I was having a, trying to make light of it. And it wasn't that I wasn't taking it seriously. It was my coping mechanism.
Yeah, definitely. How did you manage to get through those days, though? Because it's all right to say, I'll put my emotions to one side, but there's only so long that you can do that for. With your son going to the hospital, it was probably to the minute you knew that he was safe and all okay and it come out. With your husband, it was ongoing for quite a few days. So that's a long time to go, that level of instant emotions to one side. So how did you manage that?
Full disclosure, I let myself enjoy some comfort items that I normally would not. I went back to drinking coffee.
That's always good.
I had tried to get off coffee for a couple of years, and I was drinking mostly tea, and that was fine. But then when someone said, we're going down to the cafe, does anybody want a coffee? I'm like, yes, extra caffeinated, please.
Absolutely.
So I gave myself some comfort items along the way that I normally would not have, just to take the edge off a little bit. I'm not a drinker. I'm not a smoker. So those aren't the things that I'm talking about. I'm talking about healthy comfort items like a smoothie. I have to be careful of my sugar. So even a smoothie is out of character for me. But if somebody said, do you want a smoothie? I'd be like, yeah, I'll have the smoothie now. Something along those lines.
Would you say it's being kind to yourself, especially in the moment of crisis there, to help you just get through that? Yeah.
Yes. When you have a moment that you can take for yourself.
Yeah.
Like a coffee and a smoothie is something I can multitask with. I can be of service to my family and to my colleagues, to whoever is in my company at the time of the crisis. And I can also take care of myself at the same time. Sometimes I'll say, let's go take a walk.
Yeah. But you're always available though. You're not going home going, I'm in crisis mode. I'm going to put Netflix on and binge watch for a few hours. You're still there or thereabouts if you're needed.
Is available if I'm needed.
Yeah.
And I like Netflix.
But not in a crisis.
In a crisis, no, not in the middle of the crisis, no. But after the crisis, if I need to chill and do something really, really mindless just to relax my brain, then I might pick one of my brainless Netflix shows and enjoy myself.
Definitely, yeah.
That's okay, just to decompress.
Yeah, yeah. And a really interesting one to ask you is, again, in the first chapter of your book, is your daughter was in Barcelona where there was a terrorist attack. Now, you've told me a couple of good scenarios that how you're able to manage things there because you're right there. But this happened when she's in a different country. So how on earth can you manage that and deal with that?
Two big picture concepts. You can teach this. You can learn this. You can pass this protocol strategy forward. So my older daughter had been through all sorts of stuff over the years, as you read. So knew, assess, strategize, implement as best as she could in the moment. And she was in a cafe with her friends on a high school graduation trip in Barcelona. Literally, at the moment, the ISIS van rolled down the Rambla Street, the promenade over there, killing tons of people, injuring. You can read the reports for all the details. And She and her friends had just gotten up and they were on their way to La Sagrada Familia to see that famous church. And one of the girls was sipping her coffee and said, "Wait till I finish." That bought the 3 minutes that kept them in the cafe. We happened to be on the telephone that
Huh.
entire time because my daughter would check in with me regularly. So she called me from the cafe before any of this happened. And then the next thing you know, people from the promenade are rushing the glass door into the cafe. So I said to her, whatever is happening, get away from the glass. We knew that there was an attack of some sort. We just didn't know the specifics at the time. She very calmly got up and moved with her friends to the kitchen area. One of her friends fell, injured themselves. A very nice cafe worker gave her a bandage. She cleaned her up and patched her up over there. They sat against the wall. There was a woman with a baby who was crying, and my daughter tried to console her. And then somebody of authority came around, and because there were too many people in the cafe, through some sort of secret passageway, they moved them to a hotel lobby where they would be equally as safe and not an overcrowded situation. My daughter and I were on the phone the entire time. So she didn't have to make decisions by herself. She would assess the situation. We would strategize together next steps, and then she would do that. Now, here's something. If your kids are traveling abroad or they're traveling anywhere that's not in reach by car or something really easy, I equipped all my kids with a credit card with their own name on it connected to my bank account so that if they're in a situation like this, I said to my daughter, if you need to get a couple of rooms, you have the credit card, go. This is when you don't worry about expenses, you worry about safety and keeping people alive.
Yes, of course.
So she had that option. Now, her counselors for this trip told her that if she and her friends, that if they didn't get back to the bus within the next 20 minutes, they were on their own to get back to the seaside location where they were spending most of their trips. This was a day trip to Barcelona for this program. My daughter asked me, "What do you think I should do?" Because the hotel people are telling us to stay in place. I said, well, whoever it is who did whatever they did, they're probably long gone by now. So I was with her for her walk back to the bus, and she got on the bus and went back to the place. And they decompressed for about an hour, and then they moved on and had a great time at their seaside. So
How are
the
you?
answer to your
Yeah,
question is you just need to be with them.
yeah. How are you feeling at the time on the phone and suddenly this has happened? I mean, it doesn't get more scary than that. How are you? How are you? You're a mother and your daughter is in a suddenly a faraway country and there's a terrorist attack there. How are you? How are you managing to deal with this? Is it still no matter what? I'm putting it to one side and then we're just gonna deal with it.
You do what you can do. You hope that whatever training that they've had was enough. You are there to guide them. Freaking out is not going to help anything. People freaking out around you is not going to help either. So I found myself a quiet spot so that I could laser focus and be with her and be strong for her while she was navigating one of the most difficult periods in her life. And I prayed. I prayed really hard that someone was watching out for her and that she would make it back okay.
And how was your daughter after everything? How does she deal with that? Because that's a pretty traumatic experience.
My daughter, as they say, is tough as nails.
That's good.
Yeah, she went to a party that night. It's over. History, move on.
Yeah. And tell us a bit about your book, because first chapter, I'm reading it and I'm like, there's a lot going on here. What's
There's
next?
a lot going on. Lee, there's a lot going on for everyone every
Yeah.
single day.
Yeah,
It's not just
of
me,
course.
you know?
Hence why I'm a
That's
therapist.
That's why you're a therapist. You know firsthand just about all the stuff going on out there. And the reason why I shared as much as I did in this first chapter is because I wanted readers and anyone who hears these stories when I talk about them on stage or in a workshop or in a training, you are not alone. We're all in this together, and we can help each other out by communicating, by sharing. And the way that we communicate makes a difference. The way I communicated with my daughter during that time made a difference in a positive way. The way I communicated when my husband collapsed, it made a difference. He's fine today, by the way.
Yeah. All right. That's great. obviously.
So all of this stuff in the chapter is just my way of paying it forward and helping the readers or helping the viewers or the listeners to understand that they have it in their power. It's a choice you can make.
Yeah, definitely. And I think a lot of people don't realize that. And I get that. I understand that people emotionally get overwhelmed straight away. They freeze, but I think with reading your book, and listening to yourself and obviously all the things that you do when you're on stage, giving like amazing talks, people can learn so much and realize that they can bring out those techniques in. They're not rocket science. You just need to know them and you just need to be consistent and get into the habit of using them, which you've been doing for like a lifetime, which is why I would imagine you were able to deal with things as well as you could in them circumstances.
Yeah, and this is something that I do state in the book. After a while, a crisis is just a crisis is just a crisis. And you need to source your inner communications expert and do your thing to a positive end as much as you can. Not everything works outly. Not everything's a happy ending,
No.
but you do your best to make it so.
And even if there's an ending that doesn't turn out the way that you hoped, do you take anything from the fact that you couldn't have done any more than you did? How do you deal with something like that?
There's a saying, if you're not winning, you're learning.
It's a great saying. Yes. Yes. That's a
So I
good way
try
of
to
looking
learn
at
from it for the next time. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And tell us a little bit more about your book, the title of your book. Where can people get your book?
All right. So here's some news.
Okay.
The book is being updated because much has happened since 2021 when I first wrote it. So a second book based on the first book will be coming out in 2026. So details as they are made available, as they develop.
Yeah. No, that's great. That's brilliant. Um, add an extra on top of what you already got is it's going to make an additional difference to people there as well. I think it's brilliant. Really, I think the stories that you told, they're so good. They're so beneficial to people because you've give different types of circumstances, how to manage them there as well. And they're all things that we can all do, like you said. And you just got to do them. And obviously reading your book, listening to yourself, that gives people a lot of confidence of how they can go about doing it. It's not like somebody's told them and then like, well, what do I do now? You explain exactly how to do it and how straightforward it is. Yeah. And how to overcome these things there as well. So I think that's great. And it'll be brilliant when the books come out. Margie, thank you so much for coming on the podcast. Absolutely brilliant. Love having you on and love talking to you as always. Thank you so much.
Such a pleasure. Eye on the donut, buddy, not on the hole.
Thank you.